in the last stream, we were continuing our work on trying to get to the creative fluid tank from the create mod. And I think that in today's stream, we should finally be able to pull everything that we've been working on together and finally craft this creative fluid tank. I do believe that in today's stream, we will be able to get our altar up to tier 5, and we will be able to pump 1 million life points into a basic fluid tank to transform it into a creative fluid tank. And at that point, we should have basically infinite of almost any fluid that we like. The specific fluid that I'm looking forward to getting the most is going to be diesel, because once we have unlimited diesel, we can then infinitely run an infinite number of diesel generators, basically giving us an infinite amount of power. So right at the end of the last stream, we did manage to get 4 beacons, and we placed them down around the bottom of our altar here. And so now the only thing between us and a tier 5 altar is blank runes. And so what I've done between streams, and real quick actually, I do believe that my jetpack is fully charged over in here. It is beautiful. We can throw that back on. But what I've been doing between streams is I have been creating yet more blank slates. As you can see, I've got 141 of them here. Once again, I re-added the advanced pipe upgrade to this item pipe to pull out automatically whenever a piece of stone turns into a blank slate. And I spent a bit of time between streams killing the zombies and sacrificing with the sacrificial knife. Right now we have 141 blank slates, which is definitely enough to make all of the remaining blank runes that we're going to need, but might not be enough to do everything that I want to do in today's stream, because one of the main things that we're going to have to do in today's stream is set up the Well of Suffering. And in order to get the Well of Suffering up and running, we are going to need another Master Ritual Stone and 36 more regular Ritual Stones, which, much like the first time we did it, require even more blank slates and quite a few reinforced slates as well. But we'll get to that when the time comes. For now, we need, I think it's 13 runes for each side of the tier 5 altar, which is 52 runes. And then we need a further 7, 14, 21 on top of that. So I'm pretty sure that 73 blank runes should get us everything we need to upgrade to a tier 5 altar. As always, we've got 15,000 stone here, so getting over a stack of blank runes really should not be too difficult. I will go for exactly 73 here because, again, I don't want to waste any more of those blank slates. I want to make sure we have all of those should we need them. And now it should just be a case of replacing all of this dark scoria cobblestone with blank runes. And boom, we should now have, I believe, a tier 5 altar. If we head on up to the actual altar itself and take a look, you can see in the top left there, it does now say tier 5. Nice. Also, we do have a ton of quests here waiting to be claimed. I will go ahead and claim all of those right away here. Let's quickly go and drop a lot of this stuff in the system. We got some HV wire. We got a primitive hydration cell. 128 uses remaining. Increases crafting speed by 1.25x. I actually don't know what that does, but that seems like it could be useful. We got some fences. We got a redstone link, a HV capacitor, a HV transformer, some more fences, and maybe a lava crystal, and also Unbreaking 3 and a stack upgrade. Okay, that is some pretty good stuff, all things considered. The next major quest that we need to work on here is this one, which wants us to craft the next tier of Ritual Diviner. So right now, I believe in our backpack, we do have this basic Ritual Diviner, and if we shift right click, we can see that we can cycle through a couple of rituals. However, there aren't really a ton of them. There's maybe 4 or 5 rituals that we can cycle through there, but Blood Magic does have a lot more rituals, but to unlock them, you have to get the next tier of Ritual Diviner. This one right here, the Dusk version. So to upgrade the basic Ritual Diviner to the Dusk version of the Ritual Diviner, we are going to need 2 demonic slates. Those are the tier 4 slates. So we have to go through, I think, like 4 stages there. So stone to tier 1, to tier 2, to tier 3, and then up to tier 4 is demonic. We also need 2 Dusk inscription tools. These are made, again, in the Blood Altar with blocks of coal. That really doesn't seem too difficult. The Dark Scoria cobblestone we no longer need. We can just dump that into our drawers. And coal-wise, we should be able to get 2 blocks of coal incredibly easily. We do have 49,000 coal in the system here, and 2,000 life points isn't really all that much either. We do have almost 11,000 in the system, and so that is 1 of the Dusk inscription tools. and that should be 2 of the Dusk Inscription tools. Perfect. At that point, we can also grab 2 more blank slates, quickly upgrade those to demonic slates, and not too long later, we have 2 demonic slates. That did take a little longer than I thought it would, simply due to the fact that going from the imbued slate to the demonic slate does require 15,000 life points, so we did have to get 30,000 to get both of these demonic slates, but now that we have that taken care of, we should be able to head back over to our crafting grid and hopefully craft up the Dusk Ritual Diviner. And so now, if we shift right click, you will see that there are many, many more rituals than there were previously available to us. And just briefly there, I did see the Well of Suffering, which is this one right here, the Well of Suffering. So just as with the other rituals, and in fact, I didn't notice that we get a random 10 to 30 ritual stones for completing this quest. Hopefully, we get closer to 30 than 10. We got 13. That's definitely not closer to 30 than 10. Nevertheless, that does get us a little bit of the way towards getting the 36 required for the Well of Suffering. So right now, we need to make another Master Ritual Stone with 23 more regular Ritual Stones. And once again, not too long later, we should have 27 reinforced slates. And so now, if we head on back up to our crafting grid, we should be able to craft up a bunch of Ritual Stones. Again, do we have a blood orb in the system? We totally do. We'll do this. We'll put those in, and we'll craft as many of these as we can. Takes up to 37. We can then use 4 of those to craft up the Master Ritual Stone, again, with our Magician's Blood Orb. And I think that we are good to go. It says we need 36 Ritual Stones. Did I math wrong there? I must have done, because we don't have 36 Ritual Stones. However, we do get a spawner and an enchantment book with capturing 5 as a reward here. So the spawner is empty, and that's particularly useful because capturing 5 is an enchantment that you can add to a sword, and when you do, it gives the sword the ability to obtain mob spawn eggs. So by default, you can't get these spawn eggs. However, if you add capturing 5, or capturing at all, capturing 5 is the highest tier of capturing. If you add capturing to your sword, you then have a small percentage chance, if we hit shift here, to make a mob drop its spawn egg. And so what we can then do is right-click that spawn egg onto this spawner, and that will turn this spawner here into a spawner for that specific mob. And much like we've been doing with the spawners for zombies and for wither skeletons, we can then accelerate the speed of that spawner to get a lot of that specific mob. It looks like I did miscalculate there, and we were in fact 4 ritual stones shy of what we actually need. Oh, sorry, 3 ritual stones shy of what we actually need. However, getting 4 more reinforced slates isn't too much trouble. And so once again, we can get another set of Ritual Stones, and now we should have everything that we need in order to set up the Well of Suffering. So down here, I have done a bit of work between streams to try and make this look a little bit nicer, and I've also added a new room over on the side here. We'll get to the purpose of this room later on in today's stream. For now, though, I believe what I'm going to do is place this down right about here. In fact, I might place it directly on top of the spawner. So if we get rid of the vector plate real quick, if I do this, the Ritual Diviner should show me where this is going to go. I think I'm going to move that 1 block up, actually. I'm going to place it right here. That does mean I am going to have to get rid of a few of these slabs here, but that shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. Once we've gotten rid of those slabs, as with our other ritual, all we should have to do is continually right-click on the Master Ritual Stone until every single one of the runes is down. There we go. And then if we check the book here, it does tell us under the Well of Suffering section that this requires 40,000 life points to activate and has a base usage cost of 2 life points. So in order to keep this running, you do have to have life points in your system. However, the basic idea of the Well of Suffering is that it will attack mobs within its range and take the LP from attacking those mobs and place it into the Blood Altar. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to start to damage the mobs that are beneath it in this room, much like we do with our Dagger of Sacrifice, and it's going to take the LP generated from damaging them and put it directly into our Blood Altar. Now, the tricky part is making sure that there are always mobs down here and enough mobs to get enough life points to make the creative fluid tank. That is where our new room and our new spawner comes into play. Because as somebody pointed out in the YouTube comments, and as a few people have also pointed out in the Twitch chat, one of the best mobs that we can use here are witches. witches are a pretty cool mob because they regenerate on their own. And so if you place a witch in this room, the Well of Suffering will deal damage to that witch. That witch will then regenerate their health up to full again. And then the Well of Suffering will deal more damage. They'll regenerate, more damage, regenerate. And so if you put one witch in here, that one witch will continually generate life points basically forever, as long as you have enough LP in your blood networks, or in our blood orbs, to continually feed the Well of Suffering, which is pretty great. If we can get multiple witches, if we could fill this room with witches, this will damage any mob in its radius, and you'll get life points, more and more life points for every extra mob in here. So my thought process was that we could set up a witch spawner over in this room. We could then use vector plates to move those witches over into this room, and then once they're in here, the Well of Suffering will begin killing them. The reason why I'm putting the witch spawner in a different room is because by default, the spawner does have a limit to how many mobs can be in its radius. And if you get too many mobs in its radius, it will stop spawning. And so if we want to get just a ridiculous number of witches, we're going to have to move those witches away from the spawner. You can get around this using an upgrade. I can't remember exactly which upgrade it is. It's this one. So you can change the maximum number of nearby entities up to 40 if you have gas tiers, if you have enough gas tiers. Right now, we don't have 40 gas tiers, and I don't think there's a particularly easy way for us to get 40 gas tiers. And so I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to just put the spawner here and then move the witches away, given how easy it is for us to make vector plates. So now the only question is, how do we get a witch egg, right? We need to get a witch egg, which we can do with capturing 5, but how do we actually find a witch? So I think the easiest way for us to find a witch is going to be through the use of Cursed Earth. I mentioned Cursed Earth a little bit in the last episode. The idea behind this is that you can craft it using a Wither Rose and 8 dirt, and then you can place the Cursed Earth down and it will begin rapidly spawning mobs. And one of the mobs it will rapidly spawn is witches. So what I'm thinking we will do here is I'm thinking we'll spawn in another Wither, use that Wither to get Wither Roses, because again, as I mentioned previously, the way that you get a Wither Rose is by having the Wither kill a mob of some description. So I think what we're going to do here is we're going to get a bunch of tinted glass. I then think we're going to take the zombie spawner here, and I'm probably, if I don't die to the zombies there, I'm probably going to try and set this up in the nether. Basically, my plan is to build a giant box made of tinted glass, place the zombie spawner in there, get a bunch of zombies in that glass box. We can then build a Wither inside that glass box, and then when the Wither kills those zombies, we will get Wither Roses from that. So if we get yet another item collector, we can collect all of those Wither Roses without having to actually enter the mob spawner, and then we can use those Wither Roses to create a bunch of Cursed Earth back here in the overworld. So real quick, before we go, let's make sure that we have enough Wither Skeleton Skulls, and let's make sure we also have enough Soul Sand. We do have our building wand, and so let's quickly go see if we can't build a Wither zombie box over in the nether. So over in the nether, we've built this big old cube here. It's 9 by 9 by 9 on the outside and 7 by 7 by 7 on the inside. And so the plan is to head on into this cube. We shouldn't take fall damage, thanks to our trinkets, perfect. We will place the zombie spawner in the middle here, like that. Hopefully, once we apply a redstone signal to that, because we did allow it to accept redstone signals, once we do that, we should hopefully start to see zombies spawning in this box here. And then once we have a fair few zombies inside of the box, we're going to place down a Wither, we're going to activate that Wither, we're going to leave the box, and then we're going to place down a chest with an item collector on top of it. If we just do something like this and like this, that isn't quite big enough at the minute, but we can, if I'm not mistaken, increase the range of this. So that now it includes basically all of the box there. It's possible there might be a few Wither Roses on the back that we're not going to collect. However, I don't really see us needing more than a couple of Wither Roses. We don't really need a massive Cursed Earth farm in order to make this happen. And so what we should be able to do here is drop down the Soul Sand. I probably will take the spawner out before we spawn the Wither in, just because I do want to have the spawner should we need it. Please, guys, I'm trying to end your lives. If you could let me do that in peace, that would be grand. The Twitch chat did make a good point that we can just move the item collector underneath the cube, and that way we should be able to collect everything that is dropped here. I don't know if we're going to get too many more zombies. Again, there is like a spawn limit in place. And so real quick, if we break one of these corner pieces, we should now be able to head in, drop down the 3 wither skeleton skulls, quickly steal this spawner back, which I was supposed to do before we place the wither down, but that's fine. Close this up like so. And hopefully, we should see the wither explode. As it explodes, it kills all of the zombies and also turns all of the zombies into wither roses. And so down here, if we take a look, we've got 10 wither roses, we've got some rotten flesh, and we have our spawner. For the time being, we don't need to do anything with this wither. We can just leave him as he is and keep him as a little pet wither for future use, should we need the wither for anything in the future. And now, if we head back through to the overworld, we can take those wither roses and use them to craft up some cursed earth. And I think what I'm probably going to do here, temporarily, is set up maybe a little room in here, because what we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to use the cursed earth to spawn mobs. It's going to spawn basically every mob that can spawn in the overworld, and then what we're going to have to do is funnel those to a place where we can kill them with a sword that has capturing 5 on it, so that we can have a chance when we kill a specific mob to get a spawn egg. That is going to mean we're going to get a bunch of spawn eggs, most likely from a bunch of different mobs, but the one that we're specifically looking for is the witch spawn egg. So back up here, we can get some cursed earth. Again, we don't need a ton of cursed earth. I think 25 is probably going to be more than enough. 24 is close enough to 25 for us there. Vector plate-wise, we should have a couple of those lying around, but of course, our vector plates are in here. Yep, there are vector plates. Don't ignore the mob head there. That's nothing to be worried about. And so essentially what I think we're going to do, again, this is going to be temporary because we're going to replace this with a witch spawner once we have the witch. But I think we'll basically dig out a 5x5 area here to put down the cursed earth. And we'll then use vector plates to push everything that spawns on that 5x5 area to a certain point that we can then easily kill with our sword. So not too long later, and we have a bit of a cage contraption here, again made with tinted glass. Now, I'm not too sure how the cursed earth works in this mod pack. Usually, the way that it works is if you have light in a given area, artificial light in a given area, things like torches, the cursed earth shouldn't work, but should continue to be cursed earth. Whereas normally, if you have cursed earth down and it sees sunlight, it will be destroyed. So I'm hoping that by having torches down here, that's going to prevent the cursed earth from spawning any mobs, because we don't really want any mobs spawning in until we have all of the vector plates down. And again, here we want to, so it didn't quite work as intended, but it did work in that it seems to have slowed down the cursed earth a little bit, but also you'll see it's burning the cursed earth, which is what I was worried about, because I had a feeling that in this version, this mod, even the artificial light is going to destroy it, which is bad. So what we might have to do here is maybe go and recraft some cursed earth. So this is not how I intended it to go, but we have managed to acquire a few witches down here. Now, I don't want to enchant this sword, because this sword is on the brink of breaking. People have told me that I can repair this sword if we apply mending to it, which I believe is true. However, I think it would be a little tricky for us to get mending right now. We'd have to get just a regular enchantment table and just hope that we get it. So I'm thinking instead what I might do is I might make a new diamond sword and use that to apply this capturing 5 to. We could even add unbreaking to it as well. We could potentially go with a Tinker's sword, although I'm fairly certain that Tinker's swords don't accept regular Minecraft enchants. So boom, there is capturing 5, and if we have the enchant for it, we'll also put unbreaking on this as well. And then I don't believe we have, yeah, no, we put our sharpness on the other sword. So there is a creeper down here. And some witches. Okay, so we're hoping, if we're really lucky, there was the creeper. If we're really lucky, we'll get a spawn egg from these first 2 witches, although I'm fairly certain it's still a rare drop, even with capturing 5. Let's take a look. Did we get one? We did not. That is to be expected. So the Twitch chat has pointed out. Oh, goodness. That tortoise was so loud. And also we've got so many demon whales now, because we did kill a bunch of those mobs using our sentient sword. So the Twitch chat has pointed out that there's a better way for us to do this, and that is to place down the vector plates first, then get rid of the torches, and then block of the room and place the cursed earth from underneath, because if we do this, for example, you can have a vector plate floating on nothing. So what we're going to do, we're going to get rid of all of these demonic wheels here, which we can actually do in our trash can, and then we'll make 24 more cursed earth. Thankfully, we do have enough wither roses to do that. And then this time we'll just place down the vector plates before we place down the cursed earth, and that should work perfectly well. So we have all of the vector plates down. They're all on dirt at the moment. I'm going to get rid of the remaining torches in here. So now as soon as we close up the front, it should be perfectly dark in there, which means that the cursed earth shouldn't burn, which is exactly what we're after. Now what we need to do is head underneath here and basically break all of that dirt again and replace it with cursed earth. Does the Modpack not have Vein Miner? It does, but we can't use it yet. We have to defeat the Twilight Forest before we can use the Excavate, unfortunately. So the dirt is all gone, and now we just have to place down the cursed earth underneath the vector plates. The mobs, I believe, should still spawn on top of the vector plates. They do. Perfect. So you'll see we already have another witch, which is fantastic. Here, what we are going to have to do is kind of lower the floor for ourselves a little bit to make sure that we can hit the mobs, but the mobs can't hit us. So if we do something like this, I'm hopeful that from a distance here, we should be able to hit the mobs, but they can't hit us. Once again, I think what I will do is quickly empty my inventory, but I think we'll also move this gold chest over, just because I'm not going to have enough inventory space to collect all of the different mob drops that we're going to get from this endeavor. But the basic plan now is to just keep killing mobs, specifically witches, but also just all mobs that appear, until we get at least one spawn witch egg. Okay, so quite a while later, and it turns out that the odds of getting a spawn egg, even with capturing 5, are still really, really low. Someone in the Twitch chat mentioned that it's about 2%, which is not particularly high. So I tried a few things. I did kill a ton of witches using this diamond sword. We even set up a bit of a tunnel here. The idea being that the witches and all the other mobs would fall down, and I could kill them down here. That way, they took a bunch of damage before I hit them, so it didn't take as long to kill them. They were almost a one-hit kill with the diamond sword. Unfortunately, even that didn't work. We killed a bunch of witches. We didn't get any spawn witch eggs. We did manage to get a few other spawn eggs. In here, we have an enderman spawn egg, and we have 2 sky slime spawn eggs, but unfortunately, no witch spawn eggs. Thankfully, you can craft the witch spawn egg if you have 2 witch charm fragments and an egg, and the 2 witch charm fragments you can get by crafting together some witch hats, 2 glass bottles, and a spider eye. And so all we've done here is we've moved the mob masher over to the Cursed Earth farm. You'll see that we're getting a ton of mob drops, way too many. In fact, this thing is filling up super fast. But we do have 12 witch hats. And so if we take those witch hats, and real quick, I'm going to delete some more of these items in my inventory because we have just so many of them. But we'll clear out some space here for the witch hats. And all we should really have to do now is get an egg. Once we have an egg, we should have everything that we need in order to craft the witch spawn egg. Now, to get an egg, we're going to need a chicken. Thankfully, we do have X Compressum in the pack here, and so we should be able to get this chicken bait. The chicken bait, I believe, we can place down, and so long as we fulfill the criteria required by the bait, we should be able to spawn, like get a chicken to spawn where we put the bait down. People are recommending that I use Blessed Earth, which is something I've never heard of before, but I'm assuming, and people are telling me, that it's the same as regular Cursed Earth, but it does the opposite of that and produces regular mobs, so Blessed Earth. Let's give it a try. Like, if I just put this down, I don't know if it has to be dark or not. Oh, it totally works. So it looks like this totally works. I guess we just need to get chickens now, right? So we've managed to acquire a few chickens. I have picked the Blessed Earth back up just so we don't overrun our base with donkeys and pigs. But we've got 4 chickens here, and so now we're kind of just going to hope that these guys produce an egg sooner rather than later. We do have, I think, everything else that we need in order to craft up the witch egg. We've got all the hats, we can make glass bottles, and we've got the spider eyes. That does mean that it's probably time to go and tear down this Cursed Earth here as well, because of course we are going to be using this room as a witch spawner. I don't know what we're going to do with all of those drops. I guess we're probably going to have to let them despawn, or maybe try and move them up manually into our storage drawers, but even then we might need more capacity on our storage drawers if we're going to make that happen, because there's a lot of items there. Also, it looks like you actually do get the Cursed Earth back when you break it, which is not something I was aware of. People do make a good point. One that would have been probably a better strategy from the beginning, and that would have been probably just to place down a bunch of Cursed Earth in this room. Given that witches do spawn, if we would have just placed Cursed Earth down here, the Cursed Earth would have spawned all kinds of mobs, but the witches would have spawned and then not died. They would just like slowly take damage, and much like what's going to happen with the witches that were going to spawn, they would have just stayed here. So the easier way of doing this would have been to just put Cursed Earth down. We're already most of the way there to this alternative plan, and so I think we're going to go with the witch strategy nonetheless. But if you're planning on doing this, just placing Cursed Earth down near to the Well of Suffering is probably the correct way to go about it. All right, so quite a while later, we had to box one of these chickens in because the other 3 chickens all died. Well, 2 of them died by touching the exposed wire here, and the 3rd one died by walking into this stream of lava fire over here. So we took the 4th chicken and placed it into its own little protective area over here, which has managed to acquire us 1 single egg, which thankfully is all we need. And so now, back over here, if we type in witch egg, we should be able to craft up 2 witch charm fragments just as soon as we get some glass bottles. We can get those 2 witch charm fragments, 1 and 2, and then we can craft that with our regular egg to get the witch spawn egg. At that point, we can then take out the empty spawner that we got before, or any of the other spawners. We could if we wanted to take this blaze spawner and replace blazes with witches, but for now we'll take the empty one that we've been given. I have taken the time, while we were waiting for the egg, to clear out the spawner that we set up over here, and so now all we need to do is basically fill this entire room and this corridor here with vector plates. We do, of course, have a ton of vector plates here. I think I am going to upgrade these vector plates to be slightly faster. If we craft these with sugar and iron nuggets, we can upgrade them to fast vector plates. And then if we really wanted to, we could take it another step further and upgrade them to extreme vector plates, which just increases the speed at which we can move the witches away from the spawner. And in doing so, also increases the number of witches that we can spawn per second. Thankfully, we do have a ton of sugar over in this crate. And then back over here, we do, of course, have this chest, which should have quite a large amount of gold nuggets. It totally does. And if we do this, we can organize them and then pull them all out and drop them in the system. So let's go ahead and upgrade them to fast. This room here is a 9x9, so we're going to need at least 81 here, plus the extra for the hallway there. So we're probably actually going to need over 100 vector plates, but we can begin putting these down. And just to show you, I guess, you can see already that these do push you significantly faster than the older vector plates that we had before. And basically, I think we're just going to do something like this, where we have a 3-wide area on each side that pushes to the center, and then a 3-wide center that pushes forward over this way. And in fact, you can kind of see that we might not even need to use vector plates all the way to the end, because these vector plates are quite aggressive and seem to be doing a lot of the pushing for me. Like, you have that inertia that keeps you going even after the vector plates stop. So we have all of the vector plates down. These are very fast indeed. If you land, you do not get kind of thrown around, but you eventually end up over here underneath the ritual stone. So as I mentioned before, all we're going to do now is we're going to find like the center of this room. In fact, we might go back. No, we'll find the center of this room, and then we'll place down the spawner right about here. We'll then right-click that with the witch egg, like so. That's going to become a witch spawner. And then now, I'm hopeful we should start to see witches spawning. As with our other spawner that we did before, we can go and grab some sugar. We could, I believe, also grab some clocks to make this go faster as well. And if we wanted to, we could even potentially look at getting a nether star as well, because adding a nether star to the spawner allows the spawner to work even when a player is not nearby, whereas currently the spawner that we have does require a player to be nearby in order to actually spawn witches, which is not a huge deal, of course, because we can just stand nearby in order to keep it active whilst we need it active. So there is the sugar. The witches aren't spawning. I am wondering if that's due to the light levels. I don't think it needs to be dark, but just on the off chance that it does, if I do something very awkwardly, like this, that might lower the light levels in here enough to actually get them to spawn. As I mentioned, we can also put clocks on there as well. So I'll craft up a stack of clocks, and we'll see about putting those over on the spawner. They do a similar thing, I believe. I think we might have mentioned it before, but just to refresh, the clocks decrease the maximum spawn delay. The sugar decreases the minimum spawn delay. So combined, they basically just decrease the spawn delay between the first witch and the first spawn of witches and the next spawn of witches. And it does appear that we can maybe put more than a full stack of clocks on the witches there, which is interesting. I think we'll stick with a stack for now. That seems fine. Ideally, we would also put some fermented spider eyes on there, because that's going to increase the number of witches that spawn per cycle. Not that it's necessarily going to matter too much, because it seems like the witches are spawning pretty rapidly nonetheless. I will, of course, put down a vector plate right there to push any witches that spawn on top over and out of the way as well. But as you can see, we're really getting quite the rave of witches here. And so now, all we need to do, chat, is we need to get the activation crystal, and we need to get 40,000 LP into our network so that we can actually activate the Well of Suffering and begin utilizing those witches to generate a ton of life points. So there we go. We have 40,000 life points in our blood network. And so now, all we should have to do is take the weak activation crystal, and if we right-click that weak activation crystal onto the Master Ritual Stone, you'll see that the witches beneath here begin to take damage, but because of the fact that they're witches, their health goes down to 96, and then we'll go down, and then we'll bounce back up to 100. They are attacking me, so I'm going to temporarily leave here. But if we look in the blood altar, we should hopefully see, if we put our blood orb in there actually, we should hopefully see the amount going up. Yeah, so you can see the witches take damage, and then every time they take damage, the amount of LP in the blood orb goes up. Obviously, like I said before, there is a 2 LP charge, so every time that it deals damage, it costs 2 LP, but obviously generates a lot more than that. Now, we can increase the amount that is generated substantially by adding runes of sacrifice, because the runes of sacrifice increase the amount of LP that you get from non-player sacrifices. Yeah, the book says from non-player entities, each rune gives an additional 10% bonus. So I think, basically, what we're going to want to do is kind of maybe get rid of the runes of self-sacrifice. Those are probably not going to be super necessary now, but begin to replace a lot of these lower runes with runes of sacrifice. Once we've got a bunch of runes of sacrifice, then we're going to look at maybe adding some runes of speed, because it is going to take quite a while to pump 1,000,000 life points into the blood altar. And so basically the plan is bunch of runes of sacrifice. Those are going to massively increase the amount of LP that we get from each cycle of the Well of Suffering. All of that LP is going to get pumped into the blood altar. We then need to be able to move that LP out of the blood altar pretty quickly. To do that, we're going to use the speed runes, and those two combined should allow us to turn a fluid tank into a creative fluid tank, ideally without even having to increase the capacity of our blood altar at all. Just having 20,000 should be more than enough. The question is whether or not we have what it takes to get a bunch of runes of sacrifice and a bunch of the speed runes. I think we should. The speed runes are just made with regular runes, blank slates, stone, and sugar. And then the runes of sacrifice are made with gold, which again we do now have more of, reinforced slates, stone, and again those blank runes as well. So let's see if we can't make a ton of these. So it looks like we've got to the point where, if you look in the top left there at the LP number in the altar, we're actually generating more LP than we're using. So what I've done here is I've just placed a full stack of stone in the hopper. We can maybe do with replacing that hopper with an item pipe, because that would be a lot faster. But so basically now we can just put a full stack of stone into the altar and then just wait, and then that will slowly but surely transform into 64 blank slates, and then after that it will transform into 64 reinforced slates. And potentially we're actually maybe even at the point, because I don't think different recipes go at different speeds, but I think we are potentially at the point where we could just take a fluid tank, place it in, and eventually it would become a creative tank. It would take a very long time, longer than I'm willing to wait, so we are going to take steps to maybe speed this up. And of course, as we speed it up, at that point we're going to start to use the LP faster than we're making it, at which point we would then need more of the runes of sacrifice as well. So it's a bit of a balancing act between the runes of sacrifice and the speed runes, but in general, this does seem to be working pretty well here. So it looks like in the top left there, we are ever so slightly using more than we're losing. We're very close, but as you can see, we're at 16,000 out of a million. Doing it this way would take forever. And so instead of doing it that way, I'm not going to do that, and we're going to just make a bunch more runes of sacrifice and some more speed runes to try and increase the amount of LP that we get from witches, and then also increase the speed at which we use that LP to hopefully allow us to get this fluid tank and have it not take days. Alright, so quite a while later, we have replaced every single rune. So we've got a lot of speed runes, more speed runes than I thought we were going to get. I was expecting that we were going to need more runes of sacrifice than runes of speed. However, we do have a lot of witches, and I think we can still get even more witches down here. If we fly down real quick and try not to die, we have a lot of witches down here. And of course, if we come over to the spawner, we should be able to get even more witches to spawn in and fly over to add to the current pile of witches. The hard part is getting down here without the witches killing us with their bottles. But let's have a look. If we take our fluid tank and if we place this into here, the question is, are we losing more LP than we're gaining? And I think the answer is no. We're getting about 10,000 LP every 4 seconds. So what's 1 million divided by 10,000? That's 100 multiplied by 4 divided by 60. I think at the current speed, this should take about 6 minutes. And it looks like it is holding steady at the top there. That number fluctuates a little bit, but it always seems to go back up to just over 19,000. So I think if we just leave this here for about 6 more minutes, we should have our first creative fluid tank. And the fantastic thing is that as soon as we have our first one, we could just put another fluid tank in, and after another 6 minutes, we will have another creative fluid tank. While we wait for this, I think I will go and stand near the witch spawner just to increase the number of witches that we have here even further. Okay, so this is Isaac of the future talking now. I'm recording this after the stream because Isaac of the past accidentally hit the mute button on his microphone during this part of the recording. Basically, what happened here is my blood network ran out of life points. So there were not enough life points in my blood orb to continue using the Well of Suffering, but the Well of Suffering was still trying to use more life points. When that happens, you get this nauseous effect that just gets worse and worse until you actually either turn off the thing that's trying to use life points, in this case the Well of Suffering, or put more life points into your blood orbs. So what I did here is that temporarily I took out the tank that did waste quite a few life points, but it needed to be done, and I started work on the next tier of blood orb, the Master Blood Orb, which you can make by putting a weak blood shard into a tier 4 blood altar. That blood orb has a capacity of 1 million life points, which I proceed to fill before re-adding the tank back to the blood altar to slowly but surely transform into our first creative fluid tank. And there we go. A few minutes later, I didn't time it, so I'm not actually quite sure how many minutes later, but we have the creative fluid tank. As a reward for that, We get nothing. There is no reward for the creative fluid tank. However, we do now have the ability to make an infinite amount of any fluid that we like. One thing that I've seen a lot of people request, I mean, a lot of people have suggested it, including in the Twitch chat and on YouTube as well. People have suggested using the first creative tank, this one here, and filling it with life points. So basically right now we've got the life essence is a liquid that you can pick up with the bucket. And if we wanted to, we could get a bucket of life essence, put that into the creative fluid tank, and then we would have an infinite amount of life points. The problem with that setup is that the blood altar artificially limits how fast you can pump into or out of it. I can probably show you this real quick here. If I go and grab a tank of some description, I think the fluid tank from Tinkers should work here, but any tank would do. And I also grab a fluid cable. Despite the fact that this fluid cable can move fluid pretty quickly, there's a limit on how fast you can pump into or out of the blood altar. So if I did this and we set this to extract, this says it should be transferring 50 millibuckets per tick, but over here, there's a limit, and you'll see in the top left there, it's only doing 20 at a time, so it's going 20, 40, 60, 80. It has a buffer, and so we pulled out the buffer pretty fast, but once you've got through the buffer, you'll see that right now it's going up very slowly. And if we were to try and do this the other way, if we were to get rid of this and try and pump back the other way, this would take, again, the buffer would fill up, but once the buffer is filled up, it takes a while. It takes a long time to pump in that last little bit. Again, obviously right now it's, the altar is not doing anything. If we put this in, it takes a while. You'll see it does 20, 20, 20. It moves in very, very slowly. You can change this. There is a rune, the displacement rune, that fixes this. So the displacement rune, if we get our manual here, the displacement rune increases the flow rate of life essence into and out of the altar when pumping to and from external tanks. So if we wanted to, we could make displacement runes. The thing is though, in order to get up to the speed to where it's going to be worthwhile, we would need a ton of displacement runes. Each one, I believe, gives you like an extra 10% to the speed, and it is multiplicative, which means that it kind of goes up exponentially. So the first one might give you, might increase the speed from 22 millibuckets per tick to 22. Then the next one might go from 22 to 24.5, and then it kind of goes up from there to where every extra displacement rune you add increases the amount of LP that you can transfer per tick more. But the number of runes required to do that would mean that we'd have to get rid of a substantial number of our speed runes or our runes of sacrifice. And given that the witches aren't going anywhere, I really don't think it's worthwhile. Because to be honest, all we really need to do now, even without using our creative tank to get life points, we can just put this tank in. And because we still have, if we check our divination sigil here, we've still got 890,000 LP in here. So it took about 100,000 life points in the blood network to make this happen. All we need to do is just make the tank, put it in, and just wait. Right? We can make an infinite number of creative fluid tanks just by putting creative fluid tanks, just by putting fluid tanks in and waiting. We don't have to use any of our fluid tanks here for LP. It's just not required. And so going forward, if we want an infinite amount of any given liquid, we can just get a regular tank, put it in, and as long as we have enough LP in our blood network, in our blood orb, we're good to go. We're perfectly fine. So I don't think it's worth the time and effort to take a creative fluid tank, fill it with life points, get a bunch of displacement runes to then have essentially a different way of getting unlimited life points because we already have unlimited life points, right? So it would work. You could do it. I just don't think it's worth the hassle. And like I said, going forward, we can make as many of these creative tanks as we like. I'll leave that one running. And when we come back for the next episode, we will have another creative tank ready to go. For now, though, chat, I think that is probably where we're going to wrap things up for today. Next time, we'll come back, we'll start putting these creative fluid tanks to use. We'll start using them to make infinite power, maybe to make infinite resources, and we'll start working through some more of the quests. I think we've done enough blood magic for the time being, so we'll look at playing around with some of the other mods in the quest book. And honestly, we can probably start setting our sights on some of these challenge quests as well, because I really don't think it's going to be too difficult for us to make some of these ultimate singularities with all of these basic singularities. And then from there, we should be able to start making some of the other creative items in the pack as well. But that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's stream there.